Welcome back then folks to, of course, day 3 of Special Projects Pack number 17. This, of course, if you are a long-term fan of the project series, you kind of knew it was coming eventually, and if you were looking forward to it, well, I think you're going to like it. There is one indulgent thing I've decided to allow, if you will, or do with this one, and that is, despite loads of people doing liveries for this generation of ACR, this one does use a wide body, which isn't really accurate to real life, but it just looks so good in this particular form with the stickers they've done, the coloration choice. It just looks really good. The number plates as well, the intakes over the front arches, just everything about the car really comes together very well. So I decided to make that exception, and it does suit the car anyway. So if you don't want to go for the wide body, of course, you will have slightly different results in terms of the point level, slightly different handling, and of course you'll have to go for a different livery, but I'll leave that all up to you. In terms of the actual parts though, it's relatively simple because as crazy as it sounds, the ACR of this generation, which is, basically the last ACR, in other words, of the, VX shape, I think it is, this generation of the Viper, you've only got about 5 horsepower more, and the weight isn't crazy low anyway, so you don't have to make too much of a difference. In fact, the sports exhaust, as you can see here, immediately gets you to the right level of power, which is 645. Now, if we jump to the ultimate section, you don't need to worry about any of this, so we can go back to the sports stuff. You want your stage 1 weight. It's huge overkill to do stage 1, so we're adding a lot of ballast, because at least from what I could see online, it's about 1,528 to 1,530 kilos, so only a couple of kilos difference there, so I've gone for 1,528. As far as the tyres, we've got sports hards anyway, so again, to be a bit indulgent and have some fun, I've gone for sports softs. Of course, that's down to you and what you plan to use it for. As far as the club sports section, we've got the sports clutch and flywheel. The ballast, as I said, you don't really need the power restrictor for this one, but you could go for it if you want to reduce it. As far as the semi-racing stuff, we've got the fully customised diff. I've gone for the manual transmission with the full ratios, because again, it has that kind of more raw feel, and you don't necessarily want it to feel like a flappy paddle at the end of the day. I have opted to increase the body rigidity for this one, and then for the racing section we have the fully customised suspension, and as far as the extreme stuff, the carbon brakes and the steering angle adapter. As I've always said, you don't necessarily have to do the steering angle, I just like that extra turn in, so it depends if you want to be ultra realistic and not go for it, it's all up to you. And like I said, for the ultimate stuff, there's nothing fitted, and even on sports softs, well, as you can see, it's nowhere near 700 points, so you could use it for some career mode events, maybe some online stuff, and like I said earlier on, you'll see it in a second, but this is really, really good around the track. Now, in terms of the actual stuff which we've changed, for the ride height we've got what sounds to be quite high, 118mm. As you can see though, it certainly doesn't look too high. As far as the anti-roll, that is on 4, 30 and 45 for the dampers, 2.45 on the springs, 1 degree of camber front and rear. As far as toe, just a little bit on the front, 0.5 out and then 0.20 in. For the diff, 10, 20 and 30. That is pretty much spot on for me, but of course you'll have to give it a try and see what you think for you. For the auto setting, it sounds like a fairly wide ratio, 350 kilometers an hour, especially given that the real car is up around, I think 177, 180 miles an hour, so it's not as quick as you'd think. And of course the huge downforce has partially to do with that, but again, it's down to you. Depends on what track you want to use it on. Obviously Gran Turismo isn't always super realistic when it comes to top speeds anyway. You want to add 113 kilos of ballast. I've opted to leave that in the centre where it already is. No power restriction on that one. As far as downforce, again, it's up to you, but I've got it set as high as possible, because at the end of the day, it is more of a grip build. It's a cornering, track-based car, rather than a straight line monster, and there's barely anything else done over there to keep up with. So, of course, we'll jump out to Laguna Seca, which is basically where I always take stuff like Vipers, to show you what it can do in practice. In terms of notes on this one, as you'd probably assume, there aren't many. It's fantastic to drive already. I've tuned it in such a way, especially with the diff, and of course you could change this if you want to, but to have a little bit of understeer. So as you enter a corner the first time, you might find it heavier than you were going to expect, but I would recommend just stick with it for like a lap, or even just a couple of corners, and you will very quickly get a feel for the car. It's super forgiving. The Viper is basically always a lot more forgiving than you would think it would be, even with a huge amount of power. And in terms of its lap potential, well, you're probably curious how quick it would be compared to the myriad of other Vipers and Corvettes and that kind of stuff, which I've done in this same series. Well, actually, it stacks up really, really well, because in comparison to the most recent Viper, which I did, which which was of course the one generation back, the SRT 10 shape, but the ACR X edition with racing hard tyres. This is within a second of that on sports tyres in comparison. That is not bad at all for a vehicle which, if I recall correctly, I think was a fair amount heavier too, like at least 100 kilos I want to say it was, but I don't recall now. If you do decide to use it, if you're a Viper fan, if you're a fan of just special projects in general, there's quite the collection of Vipers which we've done, including ACRs, ACRX, the Diamondback McLaren, loads of different, the Time Attack. So it's a pretty popular car within the series, and this I think will be possibly one of the fan favourites for those who do enjoy these builds. So if you do decide to use it, you could definitely get use out of it in career mode or online, or just for fun. And of course stick around for the second build later on today. Check out the ones which we've already done over the past couple of days, and all of the special projects builds from every single pack are in the playlist here on screen as well. So I'll see you next time with more, and for now, thanks for watching.